I was rebuilding a life from pieces that should have broken me. The studio was born quietly, without fanfare. It started as a cleared corner of the living room, then the garage, then eventually a tiny rented space off Main Street. The sign outside was simple: Caroline's Crafts. I painted it myself, brushstrokes uneven but full of determination. Stepping into that space for the first time felt like entering a chapter I had written with my own hands. The walls smelled faintly of fresh paint and cotton, and I remember thinking, this is mine, no one can take it away. It wasn't easy. Some weeks, sales barely covered rent. Some days, I doubted whether I was strong enough to keep pushing. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the silence of those hospital corridors, the loneliness of an empty house after the divorce, the look in my children's eyes when they wondered if I was still someone they could depend on. I wanted to prove to them, to myself, that I was still here. Slowly, the children began to notice. My son started dropping by after work, curious about how many orders I was filling. My daughter, older now, began suggesting colors and styles, even helping with displays at fairs. We were mending something more important than fabric. We were mending trust, one conversation at a time. By my late 50s, the studio was no longer a fragile experiment. It was a place where people came not only to buy but to talk, to share stories of their own losses and recoveries. Women would sit across from me, sipping tea, their hands tracing the edges of a quilt or pillow, and they'd tell me about divorces, illnesses, betrayals. I listened, and in listening, I healed too. Every stitch I sewed carried the weight of those years, the heartbreak and the rebuilding, the loneliness and the resilience. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was no longer just surviving,